fans, welcome back to Room 237, and I am back with, for right now, the last of my I Spit on Your Grave reviews. It's the last film of the reboot remake series, and the last I Spit on Your Grave film up until I think it was 2017's Deja Vu, which is the direct sequel to the 70 original, and this came out in 2015. I Spit on Your Grave 3, Vengeance is Mine. And this will be the last of my I Spit on Your Grave reviews as well, because I have not seen nor do I own Deja Vu, but I do plan on getting it soon. Now, unlike this one, which is the only standalone film, and this was my last review, I was not a big fan of this film. This one does go back to following the story of Jennifer Hills, and I think it's the only one with mainly a different crew behind it. Stephen R. Monroe did not return to direct this one. Instead, this was directed by R.D. Brownstein. It was written by... It actually has a different editor, a cinematographer. I want to get who this was written by. Daniel Gilboy, Richard J. Viale, if I pronounce that correctly, is the cinematographer. Edwin Wendler did the music, so it's a very different crew. And this actually had the lowest box office return of the three newer films. I mean, this one made, I think, $572,000. This one made just over $600,000. This one only made $144,000. I think part of that is because I don't remember any kind of marketing for this film at all. Like I said, I remember this one being announced on like upcoming horror websites. This one I had not heard a thing until one day I was at the store. I was just kind of thumbing through all the horror titles, and I see this. Pulled it right out, looked at it, saw that it follows Jennifer Hills, has Sarah Butler returning for the remake, and I was like, well, let's give it a try. And to be honest, this could have been I Spit on Your Grave 2 and never made this one, and I think that would have been just as fine. It is a little bit shorter. It's almost 20 minutes shorter than both the remake and part 2. I will say I do like this a lot more than the first sequel, because it does try to do something different. It's not necessarily about a main character that gets assaulted, then seeks vengeance. This is more about Jennifer Hills now living in LA under the assumed name Angela something. I'll have to... It was like a Czech name, Jitrenka, Angela Jitrenka, which has something to do with angels and angel of vengeance. That kind of ties into a little plot. But I like the idea of this following a victim and sort of the effects that it has on the victim after the fact. We do have several flashbacks throughout the film, like very short flashbacks. Kind of like, there'll be a scene when she's at a store, an employee like tries to squeeze by her, and his hand just kind of grazes her ass or her lower back, and she just snaps. She has all these daydreams or fantasies about just snapping and killing people. Every once in a while, it goes back to her in a therapy session, kind of talking about where she is with healing and vengeance and putting her life back together, which there is a twist to that you can see coming a mile away. And it's basically just her and her disillusion and distrust of men, and then starts dishing out her vengeance onto other victims that can't really defend themselves. She decides to pretty much become this rapist vigilante. I will say the kills in this are definitely grislier, more fitting than any of the ones in this. You really only get two. There was going to be three, but the third one didn't go so well. But the two graphic deaths we get in this, I would say are fairly satisfying. They're more satisfying than any of the ones in the second film. You know, she doesn't trust any men at all. You know, rightfully so. There is one guy at her office named Matthew who shows an interest in her and tries to be nice and everything, and she's just totally mean to him. It doesn't really go off the idea that his name is also Matthew. I mean, it could have been a neat aspect if every time she said his name or he says his name, like come on, it's me, Matthew. If there was like a flashback, but there really isn't. Despite, as far as I Spit on Your Grave goes, taking this kind of original approach, there is one scene that always is like, how are they not trying to rip off this certain movie? Makes me laugh every time I see it. It almost takes me out of the movie. But she starts going to this group therapy, like rape victims Anonymous, and she meets this goth chick named Marla, who really becomes sort of the person she wants to be. You know, strong and willing to fight and go after people. You know, someone that Angela now looks up to. She was a victim of her abusive ex-boyfriend. So they start to go after people. I mean, there's a scene in a bar where they're talking about guys roughing up women. And he's like, oh, some women need it or want it. So they follow him home from the bar. They scare him. There's this 14-year-old girl in group that talks about her stepdad. So they go rough up her stepdad. Then in group, she says, oh, things are better now. So they start to see that their brand of justice actually works. There's also a group of thugs that whenever she walks by, they harass her, or the one mainly harasses her. Marla comes up, and says some, really humiliates the guy. And that's actually the first time they really become friends. But there's this older guy named Oscar that goes to the group. His daughter was raped. The guy walked, and then because of the way they portrayed the daughter, she was promiscuous, and the fact that she got no justice, it took a toll on her, and she committed suicide. So now the father, Oscar, goes to these groups. And the whole theme of the film is like, it even says on the back, justice isn't something you receive, it's what you inflict. Because the head of the group is like this very, we're all here to heal. We're all here to express and not judge and heal and forgive. And Marla is the big proponent of like, no, fuck that. You gotta go out, you gotta castrate them. And one day Oscar suggests, because the 14-year-old girl says he's now worse than ever, her stepdad. Oscar gets upset. He flips out and he says how that guy needs to be anally violated with a metal pipe. So, and this was after, because just as Angela starts to enjoy her life, see herself in like a stronger self in this friend, Marla is killed, presumably by her ex-boyfriend, but it can't be proven. The boyfriend even gets off. He walks. And she takes it out on this one detective who's very much like a Cary Elwes type actor. He really reminded me of Cary Elwes. He was played by... Gabriel Hogan, who I don't recognize anything else he was in. Excuse me, nope. I haven't seen. Oh, he was in The Collector. Oh, that's a TV show, not the movie. Yeah, no, I haven't seen anything that this guy was in. He looks familiar, but maybe I was just thinking of Carrie Elwes. He tries to be friends with Angela. She kind of puts her trust in him. But then he screws up. Marla's presumably killer walks. And she goes after him. That's sort of her first real victim. Because at that point she knows that if Marla wasn't safe and law enforcement isn't going to do shit, they're just going to keep getting off and walking. She goes to the bar where he is, kind of lures him outside. She does badmouth him, but then, he forces her to give him oral sex, which first she then complies. And just as, she's getting into it, she takes a knife out, cuts, through his dick, and then long ways, and then grabs a hold of it and splits it down. And then he bleeds out. The next guy she goes after, which is when a group, the 14-year-old, mentions how her stepdad's now worse. Oscar says he should be violated with a metal pipe. She knows where he works and his schedule, and that he likes him younger. So she dresses up like a little schoolgirl, pretends to be lost, lures him to her destination, and then, acts like she wants to have sex with him. And then he knows what's up when she says, "Can you get it up for someone that's over 17?" And that's when she knocks him out. And again, we really only get two, vengeful death scenes, but I do think they're more worth it than any of the ones in this. I would say they're on par as far as their viciousness as this one. But they definitely feel more where some of these felt, maybe Andy and Stanley's death was kind of just vengeance. The two in this both feel like, the kind of vengeance a rape victim would dish out. I mean, a guy's dick getting mutilated, and then this guy getting a pipe shoved up his ass. Which, I don't know if you can see it, but that's a big pipe. She lubes it up, sticks it in, and then takes a sledgehammer and just throws it right in there. And the sound effects of the crunching, it's just messing his organs up. Pretty decent death scene. So then she goes after this guy who was the rapist that walked from the case of Oscar's daughter. And he's like this 7-foot tall meathead, I guess. He's on his way to the gym. But he overpowers her. And she's not able to do what she wants. Cops show up. He takes a bunch of bullets. He kind of runs at him like an ape. They shoot him dead. But originally they arrest Oscar because the girl's stepdad was found with a pipe up his ass, which Oscar suggested in group. So they really go after Oscar. And I don't know if it's the character or the actress, but Michelle Hurd, who plays Detective Boyle. Oh, she was in Ash vs. Evil Dead. She was in Law & Order Special Victims Unit. I know I've seen her in other things as well. But, she's this very condescending kind of detective. Oscar's last name is Kowaza, but she keeps calling him Koska, because that's how it's spelled. So, he keeps correcting her, but she keeps still saying, Mr. Koska. It just, using kind of intimidation and whatever else to try to draw a confession out. So after the attack that she fails with the big guy, brought her in for questioning. The uh, Detective Boyle knows who she is. It's like, look, I know about uh, Sheriff Storch. He was a Louisiana sheriff. Him and some of his redneck buddies were all killed. It looked like a murder-suicide between him and this other guy and all their buddies. But there was one missing link, and that was Jennifer Hills. And that brings us to you. But she just keeps playing it cool, like, really? Wow. And like, well, you were going to a gym, so that shows the change of clothes, but the lighter fluid, I was going to return it. Where? The store. Where's the receipt? In the bag. Like, she has an answer for everything. And I do like how when she's like, do I get a lawyer? Or are those only for people that you've already decided are guilty? And then, as I mentioned, the scene that makes me laugh almost takes me out of the movie completely. And is just such an obvious reference to something else. Just as they're about to get a confession out of her, or working on a confession, we just hear this scream of Detective McDillon! And then Oscar walks in with a button-down shirt, arms out. He slit his wrist, but blood's all over him, and he just says, I did it. How is that not John Doe from Seven? All the way down to, arms out, blood all over him, button-down shirt, yelling the detective's name, saying I did it. Very obvious. But then he says, I killed them all. He takes the rap for all of Angela's murders, because she does confide in him, and he gets the idea that she's the one that's dishing out all this vengeance, so he kind of dies for her cause. And after that, she just has a complete breakdown. She's put on police surveillance, but that's when she puts this dress on. She's completely disillusioned and distrusts all men. She even goes after her co-worker, who's trying to be nice to her and offer her a ride. He drives off, then comes across that thug that's always harassing her. She acts aggressive, but then, oh, come on, I thought you wanted to fuck me. And she gets the upper hand on him, but that's when Detective McDillon shows up. And just as she's about to stab the thug, we hear a fire, a gun go off, cut to black. And the twist is that every time she's in therapy, wrapped in a gray blanket, is actually present day. And she's telling this all as a story. Because she then, the therapist says, time's up. She's like, oh, wow. Takes off the blanket, orange prison suit. So she's in jail for 2 years for attempted murder of, that guy. Lack of evidence for the murders of the other people. It's her last therapy session. She's got 2 weeks before she's out. It's her last therapy session before she gets out. She gets out of the office, changes therapist to the rapist on the door. And then these 2 women prisoners come up to shank her, but then this is when she gets in, like, super martial arts moment, beats them up, but then we see it was just another daydream, and she just kind of walks off with the same smile at the end of this one, to show that she hasn't changed. She still has her daydreams. She's still hell-bent on vengeance. And if there was ever an I Spit on Your Grave 4 that followed this story, it would probably show that she's still, still the same. Probably even more so that, I went after all these rapists because your system failed and I ended up in prison. A raped woman ended up in prison. But, I mean, it's not a great movie. It's really not. It is miles better than this. I would say it's a worthy sequel to this. I mean, they do something different. In fact, all the actual sexual assaults and rapes we don't see. Like, what happens to the teenage girl, or what happened, or what happens to Marla, we don't see. It's all mentioned or alluded to. It is all about like the aftermath and the vengeance. That's more the point of this film, where this we got both. So I thought this served as a decent follow up to that. Like, okay, what does she do after this? It didn't really offer anything about this film, like what she did in between. There is one shot, I'm guessing when she came out of the water, she leaned up against a tree. That's all we get. But we don't get anything else about how she fled Louisiana, tried to assume a new identity, dropped Jennifer Hills. I guess it's not needed, but I mean, as far as I Spit on Your Grave goes, this is probably the most original because it does focus on the survivor, how they deal with it, and how their distrust of all men, even though there's good ones, and then just the drastic measures they take where they find out that there's other ones out there, and their disillusion with law enforcement. I mean, it's decent. It's not. I think I Spit on Your Grave is one of those titles that you don't go into thinking you're going to see a game changer, but I would say it's not completely pointless like Part 2. It does offer something new, unlike Part 2. It does have different deaths than this one. Has half, actually less than half, the kills of this one. But I would say the deaths in this were probably more impactful in this one. I think they were more fitting. Well, I guess Johnny's and the sheriff's death in this were also fitting, but I don't know. I feel like they made up for the lack of deaths with the two they put in here. I mean, there's not much to them gore-wise, especially the one with the pipe. That's more like the guy's facial reactions and the sound effects. I would say it's shot fine, except for when she does put this dress on and she's walking down the street. There, I don't know if it's like a GoPro or one of those, like when it's just hooked onto the actor so they can walk and it's fixed on them. But it makes everything seem shaky around them. I've seen it in TV shows also. I've never liked that kind of shot. But I don't know. It's far from the worst of the series. Uh, the biggest compliment I can give it is actually going in a different direction, but following the story of the original, in this case the remake. So I give it credit for that. But yeah, it's miles better than this one. Uh, this one barely even I think should even be part of the series. It is the only standalone film, but I think if you just had these two, I think that would have been just fine. And yeah, it does have the cliffhanger ending, but I think it's safe to say that she's just going to continue finding and torturing uh, those that are guilty. But it's not horrible. I mean, this isn't a rant by any means. I didn't hate it, but yeah. I would say it's not on par film-wise as this one. I would say this is a better made film. As far as sequels go, yeah, this is definitely the best since then. But anyway, I'm not sure what else to say about it. There's not much to it, really. There's more to it than the second film, but... So there you have it. That is my review of all the ones I have of I Spit on Your Grave until I get Deja Vu. But this one, still my favorite out of all of them. I would say this is the second best, just because it's the same story. It's shot well, has a decent look to it, but it's really just this movie just amped up, really. I thought this movie was really bad. I can't even say I like it or that it's passable or anything. I really wasn't a fan of this film. And I'd say sequel-wise, this one has to be the best because it does do something different. It does focus on the main character dealing with the aftermath of her situation, yet being surrounded by other people going through it currently, and how she goes about her brand of justice and vengeance. So for now, prior to seeing Deja Vu, I think this is the best sequel. It's the best sequel to this one, at least, but maybe I'll pick up Deja Vu sooner than later because I am curious. But so for now, that's it for I Spit on Your Grave. I hope you enjoyed this series of reviews, and thank you for watching.